Let's continue in prayer. Creator God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
So when I was 17 years old, my mom and I took this long road trip from Missouri to New England. And I will never forget the moment, after days of open highways, when we finally had the pleasure of experiencing for the first time in our lives, New York City traffic. Now, at that time, I had been driving for a whopping 2 years. I was 17. And after 2 years of driving, I had finally gained the confidence to merge in and out of the 50-mile-an-hour 2-lane highways that surround Jefferson City, Missouri. And as I lived in the kind of town where the police like to sit and wait for you to commit moving violations, I was accustomed to driving my little 92 Ford Tempo at exactly the speed limit, always. So I remember very vividly the night when it was dark in New York, and I realized that I was surrounded on every side by cars on a 3- and 4-lane highway. And every car was going 15 to 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. And if I didn't go 15 to 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, I would be trampled. I never saw the famous New York City skyline that night. I didn't say a word to my mother. She didn't say a word to me. We just stared wide-eyed at the brake lights of the car in front of us, the brake lights of the car to our side, the brake lights of the car to the other side, and the blinding lights in our rear view mirrors. And I was hunched over that wheel and my knuckles were turning white because my grip on that wheel was the only thing in the world standing between us and hurling toward our mortal demise. Now, I have come a long way since then. Today I've been driving in high traffic city situations for almost a decade, and I'm really good at it. But even so, there are moments when I'm in traffic and I notice that my knuckles are turning white and I have just been choking the steering wheel. And I have to actually consciously say to myself, all right, I am an experienced driver. I'm not in any immediate danger. I can relax. But after 10 years, I still have that automatic, unconscious stress response, right? Those kind of automatic stress responses happen to us all the time. It's a very natural thing for us human beings. And it can be very easily explained by the science of our brains. Now, I've got brains on my brains today because I've spent a couple days, the last few days, in a church conflict management training, and we talked a lot about the science of human brains. So bear with me here today. I'm going to talk about brains a lot. So the human brain has several different parts. And the most basic part of the brain is something that we share with all animals. Some people call it the reptilian brain that we have. So this reptilian part of our brain is what keeps us alive. It's that instinctual, reactive part of the brain that makes little lizards run away from scary birds. It's what makes mama bears fight off predators to protect their cubs. It's what makes us react quickly and constructively to threats like saber-toothed tigers and stampeding woolly mammoths and New York City traffic. It's why I instinctually clench up when I'm driving sometimes. But we humans are smart cookies. We have a little extra special something in our brains that gives us the smarts to do things like form civilizations, fly through the air in big machines, and create very complicated films like Inception. That special place in our brain is called the neocortex. It's that extra brainy spark that lets us take a step back from danger, see it from different angles, take some time, apply certain learned principles, and use our imagination to come up with creative solutions to our predicaments. It's the neocortex. Okay, so now let me tell you the problem with having a brain, especially the kind of complicated brain that we have. When we use our reactive reptilian brain, our neocortex kind of takes a step back and lets our reptilian brain do its thing. Because when you're facing tigers and mammoths in New York City traffic, there's no time to think and analyze and imagine. The stress hormones just need to get where they're going and do their thing. The problem is that sometimes we go reptilian when it would be more productive to use our neocortex. And we do that when one of our threat buttons is pushed. So each of us kind of has our own unique set of threat buttons in our head. And whenever one of those buttons is pushed, our immediate reaction is instinct and defensiveness and general reptile behavior, and we lose all of our wonderful neocortex perspective. And we all have different threat buttons because we've all learned that different things are threatening in our lives. So one of my threat buttons obviously is traffic. So I go all reptilian in traffic even when it's not really appropriate. And so when I'm in traffic, I have to realize I'm heading in that reptilian direction and remind myself that I'm actually very safe and that I can relax and then I can go back into my problem-solving neocortex. But we all have other threat buttons that are much more profound and that have to do with the very core of our identities. For example, at my very core, I know that I have this belief, whether it's true or not. I have this belief that I have worth and I have potential and importance in the world because I am intelligent, because I have gone to these great schools, because I've read widely and I understand complex ideas. And because I have that belief somewhere deep inside of me, when I'm in a situation in which that core belief is threatened, when I feel like I don't know the answer, when I feel like someone's questioning my intelligence, I can go into that reptilian mode because something at the very core of me is being threatened. So I feel like that piece of me that gives me value is in danger. And that button is pushed and I can get defensive or I can shut down and you can forget about any kind of neocortex thinking, imagination, sense of humor, problem-solving perspective. It's all out the window. So that's a threat button that I know that I have. And all of us have those kinds of core beliefs about ourselves that when pushed by other people lead to things like defensiveness and resentment and other reptilian-like responses. And when we're in community, like a family or a workplace or a church, we're constantly pushing each other's buttons. And part of that is because you don't know what the other person's buttons are. And a lot of times we're not even conscious of our own buttons, right? But the more we can become aware of our buttons, and maybe of other people's buttons, the more we can catch ourselves gripping that steering wheel, and the more we can consciously stop and tell ourselves, you know, I know this button has been pushed, I'm going in the reptilian direction, but really I can assure myself that I am safe and that I do have value and that it's going to be okay. The more we can consciously get from the reactive reptilian part of our brain up into the neocortex, the better it is for everyone. And for me, that is at the heart of what Jesus is saying in this week's gospel text. Jesus concludes in this reading, "So don't worry, God's going to take care of everything." Which in itself is kind of annoying, right? It's kind of an annoying thing for someone to say to you. But the real meaty stuff in what he says is the reason why we shouldn't worry. And he talks about the birds of the air. He talks about how they don't sow, they don't reap, they don't gather their crops into barns, they don't produce really anything that people find particularly valuable. And yet they are so important to God that God prepares a gourmet buffet of seed for them every day. And Jesus talks about the grasses of the field. How they don't toil or spin or work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They don't even live very long. Tomorrow those grasses are going to be plucked up and thrown into the fire. They are that insignificant. And yet God thinks that these useless grasses are so precious that God clothes them with the finest, most beautiful, intricate blossoms. Even King Solomon in all his glory, Christ says, was not clothed like one of these blades of grass. And this is the reason you need not worry. This is the reason you need not feel threatened at your core by the things that people say and do. Because even Vicki, for example, even if you weren't intelligent, even if you didn't go to school at all, even if you were as dumb as a blade of grass and the world thought you so insignificant as to throw you out tomorrow, you would have so much value to God. You would be so important to God. Your life would be so precious and worthy and unconditionally pleasing to the one who created you. So, don't worry. If you ever, in the coming days, weeks, months, years of your life, feel that reptilian reactivity coming upon you, and you suspect that it's because someone or something is threatening you at the very core of your self-worth, I want you to take a step back. Remind yourself that you are safe in God, that it's ridiculous to your Creator that you would ever be unworthy or insignificant. And train yourself to know that until it becomes instinct. And in that, be liberated to go out and neocortex this world, to imagine and grow and laugh and love and cross boundaries and confront injustice and be as beautiful as God sees you. May we all do this. Amen.